The studio lights were still on long after midnight. The music was loud, but the room felt heavy. He was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes, but the kind that comes from years of pushing forward without slowing down. The album was almost done. Features were locked in. A comeback was finally taking shape. Just one more drive. A few hours later, the road was quiet. Morning traffic had barely started. Somewhere between exhaustion and confidence, he believed he could make it home. He always had before. 5 minutes earlier, he had been on the phone. His voice sounded calm. Focused. Certain. Then everything stopped. When the news broke, most headlines talked about a car accident. Alcohol. Speed. A tragic mistake. But that story barely scratched the surface. Because the man behind the wheel had been living on borrowed time long before that morning. Years earlier, audiences met him as Ox in the film Belly. Cold. Silent. Dangerous. Many believed it was acting. It wasn't. The truth is harder to sit with. Some men don't play roles. They reveal them. So what happens when a man's real life is darker than his most feared character? And what do the final 48 hours tell us about a life that never learned how to slow down? This is not just a story about a crash. It is the story of Louis Rankin, and the role he never escaped. When most actors prepare for a role, they study the script. They rehearse lines. They imagine a life they have never lived. Louis Rankin did none of that. When Hype Williams cast him in Belly, there was no audition and no acting lesson. Hype gave him one instruction. Be yourself. That alone explains why Ox felt different from every other character in the film. Nas delivered thoughtfulness. DMX brought chaos. But Ox brought silence. The kind that makes people nervous because it doesn't explain itself. Louis Rankin did not need to learn how to hold a weapon on camera. Federal agents later questioned him about how naturally he handled an AK-47 on set. The answer was simple and uncomfortable. He already knew. Ox did not speak often, but when he did, the words landed heavy. There was no exaggeration in his movements. No dramatic flair. Every step felt measured. Every stare felt intentional. That level of restraint does not come from training. It comes from lived experience. This is why many viewers left Belly unsettled without fully understanding why. Ox did not feel like a movie villain. He felt like someone you might encounter once in real life and never forget. Someone whose reputation arrives before he does. In interviews, Louis Rankin never pretended otherwise. He openly admitted that much of what audiences saw on screen was drawn from his own reality. The streets he walked. The rules he lived by. The power he understood. For Hollywood, that authenticity was both the magic and the problem. Film thrives on illusion. It needs actors to step in and out of characters. Louis Rankin never stepped out. Ox was not a mask he removed when the camera stopped rolling. That made people uncomfortable. Studios want control. Louis Rankin represented the opposite. Even the name Ox carried meaning. Strong. Unmovable. Dangerous when provoked. DMX gave him that name on set, and it fit perfectly. Not because it sounded good, but because it described him. This was not method acting. This was exposure. And while audiences praised the performance, the industry quietly took notes. There are roles that make money, and there are roles that bring risk. Louis Rankin embodied both. Ox became iconic because he was real. But reality, especially when it refuses to soften itself, rarely gets rewarded for long. That truth followed Louis Rankin long after Belly ended. Belly showed violence in carefully framed scenes. Real life did not offer that distance. Long before cameras followed him, Louis Rankin lived inside a world where reputation mattered more than explanations. In interviews, he spoke openly about his past, never asking for sympathy or forgiveness. He said he had beaten multiple murder charges. He admitted to drug-related cases involving cocaine and heroin. He never softened the language. For him, honesty was not confession. It was control. That distinction matters. In cinema, violence is edited. In real life, it lingers. Louis Rankin carried the weight of that difference everywhere he went. The same intensity that made Ox unforgettable also made Louis difficult to place inside an industry built on appearances. Hollywood prefers danger at a safe distance. Louis Rankin erased that distance. Producers knew what he brought to the screen, but they also knew what followed him off it. He did not reshape his image. He did not attend meetings pretending to be someone else. He walked into rooms with the same posture he carried on the streets. For some, that was refreshing. For others, it was alarming. This is where the myth and the man collided. Audiences assumed Ox was exaggerated. The truth was more uncomfortable. Ox was restraint. The real Louis Rankin had lived without one for years. The film captured the quiet moments. It never showed the legal battles, the long nights, the alcohol, or the pressure of constantly proving strength. And yet, Louis Rankin did not view this life as tragedy. He saw it as survival. That mindset shaped his music as well. His lyrics did not tell stories from the outside looking in. They spoke from inside the storm. Titles like Typewriter were not metaphors crafted in a studio. They were memories translated into sound. As fame grew, the expectations changed. People wanted him to evolve, to distance himself from the past, to become safer. But safety had never protected him before. Power had. That belief closed as many doors as it opened. Opportunities came, but they came with conditions. Image adjustments. Silence. Compliance. Louis Rankin refused all of it. He challenged people publicly. He questioned motives. He named names. In an industry that rewards discretion, that was unforgivable. So while Ox became legendary, Louis Rankin remained complicated. Admired by fans. Watched closely by authorities. Kept at arm's length by studios. The film ended. The consequences did not. And as years passed, the line between who he was and who people feared him to be disappeared completely. That was the cost of never stepping out of character. In the final 2 days of his life, Louis Rankin believed the turn had already begun. The album was nearly finished. The title said everything. The Return of the Don Dada. For Louis, this was not nostalgia. It was correction. A chance to reintroduce himself on his own terms, not as a movie character frozen in the past, but as a living voice with something left to say. The features alone signaled ambition. Snoop Dogg. Sizzla. Names that still carried weight across generations. He spent long nights in the studio, pushing through fatigue. Friends noticed the exhaustion, but Louis had always trusted momentum more than rest. Stopping felt dangerous. Slowing down felt like surrender. 2 days before his death, he announced the album publicly. The response was immediate. Fans were excited. Conversations started again. It felt familiar. It felt powerful. But power has a cost. Louis Rankin had a complicated relationship with alcohol. Rum was never hidden from the story. He joked about it. Admitted it. Lived with it. A year earlier, he had served time for a DUI. The warning signs were clear, but patterns are hard to break when they have shaped your identity. On the night before the crash, Louis stayed late in the studio. He was drained, but confident. There was still a long drive ahead. More than 3 hours. He made the decision he had made countless times before. He would handle it. Minutes before the accident, he spoke with his partner and manager, Jules Chaotic. The conversation was ordinary. Plans? Timing? Movement? Nothing suggested it would be the last time they spoke. At 9:15 a.m., on Highway 89 in Ontario, his car crossed into the path of a gravel transport truck. The collision was head-on. Violent. Immediate. There was no second chance. No pause. No rewrite. Investigators later confirmed what the headlines would repeat. Louis Rankin was intoxicated. His blood alcohol level was well above the legal limit. Marijuana was present in his system. The truck driver survived without physical injury. For many, the details became judgment. For those who knew him, the tragedy felt painfully consistent. Louis Rankin lived fast because he believed slowing down invited weakness. That belief carried him through danger, success, and survival. In the end, it betrayed him. The comeback never arrived. The album never dropped. And the man who never escaped his role ran out of road before he could prove there was more to the story. America never quite knew what to do with Louis Rankin. On one hand, the culture embraced him. Ox became iconic. Quoted. Studied. Replayed. For many viewers, especially those who had lived close to violence, his performance felt honest in a way few films dared to be. On the other hand, institutions recoiled. When Belly was released, Magic Johnson refused to screen the film in his chain of theaters. He said it portrayed too much violence and reinforced harmful images of black men. His decision sparked debate that still lingers today. Was Belly exploitation, or was it exposure? Louis Rankin stood at the center of that question. He represented a reality America often prefers to keep edited. The kind of truth that does not offer redemption arcs on schedule. The kind that does not apologize for existing. In Ox, audiences were forced to confront something unsettling. Not a monster. Not a hero. But a man shaped by environment, power, and consequence. Hollywood thrives on transformation. Characters fall and rise. They learn lessons. They soften. Louis Rankin never promised any of that. He did not arrive with a narrative designed to comfort. He arrived with a presence that demanded acknowledgement. That made him dangerous in a different way. Studios can market crime. They can profit from it. But they struggle with people who refuse to separate their art from their reality. Louis Rankin blurred that line beyond repair. To some executives, he was risk. To others, liability. Yet outside boardrooms, his influence grew. In hip-hop culture, authenticity still matters. Fans recognized that Louis Rankin did not pretend to be redeemed for applause. He did not sanitize his past for acceptance. He remained consistent, even when that consistency cost him opportunities. Internationally, especially in the Caribbean, his image carried deeper meaning. He embodied a bridge between Jamaica and America. Between dancehall and hip-hop. Between survival and expression. Louis Rankin became a mirror. And not everyone liked what they saw. But mirrors are not meant to flatter. They are meant to reflect. And America, whether it admitted it or not, saw a piece of itself staring back. When the dust settled, the headlines moved on. A crash. A toxicology report. Another cautionary tale. But those details alone do not explain why Louis Rankin still lingers in memory. He left behind unfinished work. An album that never reached the world. A comeback that existed only as an announcement. He left behind 3 daughters, a family caught between grief and conflict, and questions that never found clean answers. Even in death, nothing about his story resolved neatly. Much of his money had gone into funding his return. His life insurance had lapsed. The accidental death policy was voided because he was under the influence. A GoFundMe was created, then taken down. Tension followed him to the very end. It was a life lived without cushions. Yet legacy does not depend on comfort. It depends on impact. Louis Rankin did not leave behind a long filmography or a carefully managed image. He left behind a moment that still refuses to fade. Ox remains one of the most unsettling figures in American crime cinema because he was not designed to be liked. He was designed to be honest. That honesty cost Louis Rankin opportunities. It closed doors. It shortened patience. But it also made him unforgettable. Some men spend their lives trying to escape who they are. Louis Rankin never tried. He carried his truth openly, even when it worked against him. In a culture that rewards reinvention, he chose consistency. In an industry that demands distance from reality, he stood too close to it. That is why his story still matters. Because it asks a difficult question. What happens when authenticity has no exit plan? Louis Rankin never escaped the role people feared most. But in refusing to pretend, he left behind something rare. A presence that cannot be rewritten. If this story made you reflect on someone who lived too fast, or a moment when slowing down came too late, share your thoughts below. And if you believe some stories deserve to be told without softening the truth, stay with us. We remember the ones who refuse to disappear.